Hello and welcome to this video about the aspects formed among outer planets in 2024. I'm Jamie Kale-Miller of PandoraAstrology.com. In this video, we're going to take a look at how the outer planets connect with each other in 2024. So during 2024, there are two major outer planet aspects happening. Jupiter is going to square Saturn, and any planets that you have caught in the crossfire are going to really feel it. Jupiter is also going to sextile Chiron and support any Chiron transits that you're having. Why does this matter? Well, it matters partially because we haven't had outer planet connections between each other for years now. The last time we had a really big event like this was the pandemic year 2020. And I made videos extensively about that. It was a really big deal. And you'll find my playlist about that on my YouTube channel. But suffice it to say, we haven't had these kinds of interplanetary aspects for several years. And so we're still kind of living, the aftermath of the pandemic. But now this is a year in which some new energies can be set. So if something in your chart is caught in the crossfire, which is to say it occupies any of the degrees that these planets are meeting up in this year, then you're definitely going to feel it. And this video is designed to help you to discover which planets those might be and think about how they may impact you. So first of all, what do I mean by outer planet aspects? Well, the outer planets are the planets furthest out in our skies, meaning Pluto, which is the furthest, and yes, I do count it as a planet, Neptune, Uranus, Chiron, Saturn, and Jupiter. And those planets move really slowly. Because they move so slowly, this means that they will transit things in our chart slow enough to be noticeable. They'll put us through really long-term changes that last maybe a year or two, and that we feel very deeply, and that put us through real changes and transformations. So, for example, when Saturn arrives in the degree of the zodiac where your Venus is, we say it transits your Venus, and you feel it strongly during each pass as Saturn delivers strong pressure to take responsibility. That's a Saturn thing. For your relationships, that's the Venus thing. You've undoubtedly had at least one and probably many Saturn transits to Venus in your lifetime, and you felt that kind of pressure before. Knowing when it's coming around again is really important and valuable. If you already know that Saturn is heading for your Venus, then you can be prepared for a good outcome to that transit. And you won't be surprised when you find yourself looking more seriously at all your social connections, maybe deciding to deepen some friendships that pass Saturn's test and pull away from others that don't. And that would be how you would feel a Saturn transit if it was happening to your Venus. But Saturn transits can happen to anything. And when piled on top of that, you have a Jupiter transit to those things, well, it's a whole other ballgame. So a transit of an outer planet to something in your chart is a great thing to know about, and therefore, how much more significant is it when not one but two planets are aspecting things in your chart overlappingly? The impact is multiplied, and you definitely want to know when this kind of thing is coming. So on a day when Jupiter and Saturn are aspecting each other in the sky, if you have a planet in that particular degree, and that is happening a couple of times this year, but if you have a planet in that degree of the appropriate signs, you will feel it. And I will tell you what those special degrees are and show you also. And Chiron and Jupiter are doing that too, and giving us those kinds of very special degrees that will really be feeling these transits this year. So I'm going to share my screen. There is a lot that I'm going to show you about this, so be prepared for a lot of technical details now. And if you're a visual learner, this should work pretty well for you. If you're an auditory learner, you might just want to listen to what I'm telling you. And if you're a physical learner, then probably the animated window that I'm going to show you in a minute of these planets actually in motion might work a little bit better for you. So here is Saturn's transit span for the year. And here's what I mean by that. A transit span is the degrees of the zodiac that a planet is moving through this year. And to give you an idea of what I mean by that, let me actually show you a blank wheel. The zodiac is a circle. It's measured in 360 degrees. It's not a line. It's not a loose connection of signs. It is a circle. Circles are measured in 360 degrees. Each sign, therefore, there being 12, 360 divided by 12 means that each sign is divided into 30 degrees. And this is what I love about astrology. It is the only divination tool that has a precision factor that matters in the interpretations. The degree that you have a planet in your chart matters because it impacts the timing in which that will be transited. If you have something in 5 degrees of Leo right over here, it will be transited sooner than if you had the same planet later in Leo, like 25 degrees Leo. And the transit will happen in a different timing. It will happen in, it may be a fast transit or it may be a longer term transit. Those things all differ, and it differs by the degree that your planet is placed in when it is being transited. And that is a precision that matters. So that is what the degrees are. They are divisions, a 360-fold division of the zodiac that tells us precisely where you have something in your chart, and that can tell us precisely when something in the sky is impacting it in a way that you would undoubtedly feel. So here's Saturn's span for the year. Saturn is traveling. Really wish I could get this into a nice pointer. Okay, that's going to have to be the best that we can do. Saturn enters his span for the year here in March of 2024. And that span begins at 12 degrees. Saturn travels forward through these degrees until he comes to 19 degrees, where he turns retrograde, and that happens on June 29th. And then he backs up through all of these degrees again into 12 degrees, where he turns direct or forward, and then moving forward passes through the entire span again. So the span of a transiting planet is defined as the degrees that it will zigzag through during the year. And the end of the span is always the largest degree that it hits, in this case 19, and also the one in which it goes retrograde or turns backwards. And the beginning of the span is the bookend at the other end, where the transiting planet returns to and turns direct at, and then proceeds to finish it out. So these are all the degrees that will receive a multi-pass transit from Saturn this year. And if you look at this page on the right, you'll see that I have listed the multi-pass aspects that are happening. Jupiter, traveling through Gemini, will be squaring this Saturn that's traveling through Pisces. And these are the dates in which that connection will happen. August 19th to June 9th. And then Jupiter's span is 11 to 21 degrees, Saturn's is 12 to 19 degrees, and they have overlap during all of Saturn's span, 12 to 19 degrees of Pisces and Gemini, which are mutable signs. They form a square. They make a hard angle to each other, and thus anything in your chart in a mutable sign is going to be caught in the crossfire. That means anything you have in 12 to 19 degrees of Gemini, Pisces, but also Virgo and Sagittarius is going to undoubtedly be receiving a stressful transit of Saturn and a helpful, what I like to call good fairy transit of Jupiter this year. Now, also this year, Chiron is traveling through a span that overlaps with Jupiter's. So let's look at Chiron's span here for a moment. Here's Chiron's span, and I'll get to Jupiter's last because Jupiter is the linchpin, forming a connection between Chiron and Saturn. So Chiron is Chiron has a smaller span, and that's because Chiron is further out than Saturn and travels more slowly. So Chiron only covers 5 degrees this year, starting at 19 degrees in the sign he's traveling through, which is Aries. So he enters his span in June of 2023. So he's already there when this year begins and travels forward up to July of 2024. So he's somewhere in here right now. I think he's in 21 degrees right now, and at the making of this video. So in July, Chiron turns retrograde, backs up through all of these degrees to 19, turns direct in December at the very end of the year, and then finishes out this span right here in February of 2026. So Chiron is a slower mover, and therefore, and this is a direct connection, the slower, this is a rule in astrology. You can tattoo this on your forehead. The slower a planet moves, the more profound its impact on us, the more depth oriented its impact is on us. And Chiron is one of the heavies. Chiron is the wounded healer, whereas Saturn teaches us the serious lessons. Saturn reminds us, where do you need to be more disciplined? Where are things falling apart? Where do you need to get it together? Where do you need to be more professional? Where do you need to apply structure and ambition? Where do you need to work hard? Where are you kind of inadequate? Saturn tells us about all that stuff, which sounds heavy enough, but Chiron is heavier. Chiron is even more serious because Chiron shows us where our wounding is. Where is our deep wounding? Where are we struggling in that way? And during a Chiron transit, you can expect to have old triggers come up from the past, but you might not recognize them as old triggers. You might feel like something is hurting you, is wounding you in the present moment, like something is going on that is just like hurting you to the core. And you might not recognize, if you haven't seen an astrologer and you don't know about Chiron, you might not recognize that this is actually a trigger of something from the past, maybe several things, several layers of things. It may be triggering layers of old wounding that has snowballed over your lifetime and providing you actually with an opportunity to heal it once for all, like to melt that snowball down. I'm getting so excited about all this that my words are tripping over each other. A Chiron transit is a fabulous opportunity to melt that snowballed pain that is around the nubbin of your core wounding and heal it once and for all, so that you can let go of tremendous baggage and move forward with more lightness and freedom and comprehension of your whole self. So Chiron transits are really, really important, and they run really, really deep. Notice the span, 19 to 23 degrees. I showed you a minute ago that Saturn's span is 12 to 19 degrees. So these two only overlap in 19 degrees, and they don't even actually connect because Chiron is traveling through Aries, Saturn is transiting through Pisces, and that is not an aspect that astrologers generally pay attention to. Not very much anyway. So then we have Jupiter, which, as I mentioned before, is going to be the linchpin between these two. That's because Jupiter has a span this year that's really large, and that is because Jupiter is faster moving. And yes, that does imply that Jupiter's transits are lighter and easier to cope with. In fact, Jupiter's transits tend to be helpful. And I heard Stephen Forrest say this in a workshop where I actually got to be in the room with the man. And he said that, like even a hard aspect from Jupiter by transit is just not all that bad. And he was right. Jupiter transits tend to bring benefits. They sometimes make you grow in uncomfortable ways, but they do help you to grow and expand, and they often bring a great deal of confidence that can help you cope with other transits. So Jupiter's span this year starts at 11 degrees when Jupiter enters it in July of 2024. Jupiter's right now still finishing out Taurus. This isn't set for the present, but Jupiter is now still finishing out Taurus. And I should probably, well, I'll get back to that in a minute. So Jupiter's going to enter his span in July of 2024 at 11 degrees, travel all the way forward over a bunch of months to October 9th, where he turns retrograde in 21 degrees of Gemini. Let me get my little pointer going again. And then backs up right here to the day that he turns direct in 11 degrees, still in Gemini, and then proceeds to finish out the span by May of 2025. And then will quickly move into his next year's span, which will be mostly in the sign of Cancer. So, so you can see that Jupiter's span overlaps with Saturn's precisely. In fact, Saturn's span from 12 to 19 degrees nests inside of Jupiter's span like a wooden doll. And Chiron's span overlaps in that Chiron covers 19, 20, and 21 degrees, and Jupiter does too. The really big difference is that Jupiter and Saturn will be squaring each other, whereas Jupiter and Chiron will be sextiling each other. So Jupiter and Chiron are acting as buddies to each other this year, and Jupiter and Saturn are in an argument this year. And the argument is that Saturn wants you to work hard, and Jupiter wants to take off some of the pressure and make it easier for you. This is why I'm such a fan of Jupiter and Saturn aspects. Like when you're having a year in which you're having a transit of Saturn and Jupiter both, it is a fabulous year for learning and growing. This is because Saturn delivers while Jupiter promises. And so when you're in a year where you're under pressure to deliver because Saturn is transiting something in your chart, and at the same time, Jupiter is filling you with the confidence to promise, well, then these two planets are going to really put you through your paces and make you work for your growth. And then you can thoroughly enjoy, even if you're like the kind of person who thinks that you're never, ever good enough, you can benefit especially from this kind of transit, because this is the kind of transit that gives you double heaped up rewards for the effort that you put in. So now I want to show you this stuff moving through time. So I'm going to set this to run by weeks for now. And we're going to watch things. Ooh, it moved along so quickly. Okay, I better set this for days. So what I want you to watch for is Saturn and Jupiter are going to come into a sextile, but you don't really, actually they won't even. Jupiter already did that. Okay, so what I want you to watch for is Jupiter is going to enter Gemini. Right, here's Jupiter, and boom, there he goes into Gemini. So Jupiter's entering his span. Saturn has already entered his span. And that actually happened, let's watch that happen. We know that Saturn's span begins at 12 degrees, right? We saw that over here. So here's where Saturn enters his span, 12 degrees, right there, as I said, during March. And that's what it says on this diagram. So there's Saturn entering his span. And you know what I think? I think to make this more straightforward, I am going to set this for weeks. What I want you to do is just keep your eyes on this Saturn right here, cruising up to 19 degrees, backing up to 12 degrees, cruising on to the end of 19 degrees and finishing out. And that happens so quickly that I barely even had time to explain it while it was happening. Now I'm going to show you that same thing for Chiron and Jupiter. So for Chiron, let's go back to June of 2023. We'll go back to April of 2023. Here's Chiron. His span begins at 19 degrees. Watch Chiron travel, 19 degrees, okay? And then he backed up, and now he's re-entering. Let's see when that happens. When does Chiron re-enter 19 degrees during 2024? Well, it's right about here in April. Chiron really gets to work for the year in April, cruises up to 23 degrees, turns retrograde right there in late July. July 27th, he's already turned retrograde, just as I showed you on the diagram. And now proceeding backwards to 19 degrees, where he turns direct. And you know he's direct because the little red RX symbol has disappeared. Here he's retrograde, going to turn retrograde December 29th. It's December 28th. So boom, he goes direct and passes through 23 degrees and moves on. So that's how Chiron behaves when he's doing all of that. Now let me go back to Jupiter entering Gemini, and I'll show you his span, which he's doing now backwards. Okay, so here's Jupiter, and this I am going to set for days because it's happening so fast I can barely explain it. Boom, he just entered the span. You know what? I want to have Jupiter's diagram here up on the side so that you can kind of track all of this. There's Jupiter's diagram. So we know he enters the span at 11 degrees. And here it is. And yes, it is July of 2024, just like I said. Now we're going to see him travel forward to 21 degrees, turn retrograde in October. Let's watch that happen. Cruising along, Jupiter does move faster. That's why he covers such a broad span. 21 degrees, boom, going retrograde during October, backing up to 11 degrees, just like this diagram says, by February of 2025. And boom, he's direct, it's February, and then moving along and finishing out his span in May of 2025. Right there. So now I'm going to start the whole thing over because I want you to observe something different, which is how these connect. So I'm starting in present time, which is January. And there Saturn's entered its span, Chiron's in his span, Jupiter's still in Gemini, Taurus. Boom, now he's in Gemini. Now we're going to see the action. Okay. Yeah. I want to see Jupiter connecting with Saturn. And boom, there it is. It happens so quickly. And I'm afraid this line is so skinny. Sorry, I don't know how to make that line any fatter, but I know you can see it. Jupiter has entered into the square with Saturn. And you'll see that they form a square at 17 degrees. And I have this written on this sheet. During August 19th, Jupiter will square Saturn, come into its square with Saturn. I thought that I had the dates of these on here, and it seems that I don't. But suffice it to say that 17 degrees is a really important place where if you have anything in your chart in 17 degrees of Gemini, Pisces, Virgo, or Sagittarius, that planet is going to get like a triple dose of this transit. It's going to be particularly intense because these two will not only both be transiting it this year in an overlapping pattern, but will actually do so within the same week. And that's within the same day. And that's going to be a very pointed, and that looks like it's happening in the middle of August. So you really might want to mark your calendar for that. So let's continue to let this move because now that's moved on. Jupiter's moved on and is about to connect with Chiron. There. Okay. So now you can see Chiron and Jupiter connecting here. It's November, long time to wait for that, but this sextile is in play between the two of them. And so that is a day to watch out for. If you have anything in your chart in Gemini, Jupiter will be transiting it directly and Chiron will be assisting. But if you have anything in Aries at 19 degrees, Chiron will be transiting that directly, and that will feel the intensity, the full force of a Chiron transit, and Jupiter will be assisting. By the way, if you're enjoying this video and getting value from it, please like it right now before you forget. Subscribe to our Pandora Astrology channel for more good stuff like this. And here's why. We are actual practicing astrologers, not just astrology content creators who have little experience actually talking with clients. We are in the trenches with wonderful clients like you every day. And our astrologers have over 60 years of combined wisdom interacting with clients around charts in this practice. So hit that like button and consider seeing one of us for a session where you can learn so much more about yourself and how to live your best life. I'm going to show you the exact dates when these hits are precise, and you really might want to put these into your calendar. So August 19, 2024. Yes. And this is when Jupiter and Saturn square each other, and you see the red square line. And then they do it again on December 24th. But in a different degree, and that's 14 degrees. So if you have anything at 14 degrees, an immutable sign, again, Gemini, Pisces, Sagittarius, Virgo, you are going to feel this date really strongly. And notice how it's very close to Christmas. This is exactly the kind of thing that will determine how your Christmas goes and that you might want to know about, like before you plan your Christmas. Like if you have a difficult family experience and you feel like you have to go and spend Christmas with family, and this kind of transit is coming, you might want to think twice about that. Or you might want to enter into it with a very deliberate plan to get something out of it, for yourself. And the reason that I'm saying this is because when people don't know about astrology, they will look around in their life for meaning. Like, why is this thing happening to me right now? Oh, it must be because it's New Year's. It must be because there's a lot of weird stuff going on in politics. It must be because I, had that conversation with my boss the other day. We'll always be looking for something in the environment that is creating our experience. And holidays have nothing to do with astrology. Well, some of them do, but that's the pagan holidays. Holidays are a fixture of our lives. And when a big transit happens close to a holiday, if you didn't know about astrology, you would just think, oh, well, that was the year that I had a really crappy Christmas with my family. And there was a big blow up and alcoholic dad did what he always does. And why did we not know that he was going to do that? And yet, because you know about astrology, you can know that this Christmas might be pretty intense. And if you have something at 14 degrees, you might know this Christmas is going to be pretty intense for you. And that might make an impact on your plans. It's really nice to have that kind of foreknowledge, don't you think? Okay, so then the other dates that I want to show you are October 12, and these are going to be the Jupiter-Chiron connections. October 12, here Jupiter and Chiron form a beautiful sextile in 21 degrees. So if you have something in 21 degrees that Chiron is transiting, especially if it's in Aries, then Jupiter might be helping. Yes, if it's in Aries, Jupiter will be helping. Then the next one to come is pretty soon after that. It's November 2nd. And here, Jupiter and Chiron form a sextile in 20 degrees. So again, anything that you have in 20 degrees of Aries, Jupiter will be wingmanning that. Jupiter will be helping and assisting you to get through whatever difficult triggering that Chiron is doing of some core wounding that maybe you didn't even know that you had. And then we have the final date that I want to show you, which is May 18th of 2025. Here, Jupiter is sextiling Chiron outside of the span that they're in this year, but still in the same signs. And that's happening at 25 degrees, just as Chiron is moving into his span for the following year, 2025, and Jupiter is getting ready to leave town, leave Gemini and move on into Cancer and begin his span for 2025, 2026. So now I'm going to get away from the technical stuff and tell you a little bit more about how this is likely to feel and why it's important to understand this before it happens and how you can find out more. So the Jupiter-Saturn square is going to be felt really strongly by any planet or point that you have in your chart that's caught in the crossfire, such as your ascendant in 16 degrees of Virgo, such as your moon in 13 degrees of Pisces. Anything that is in that degree span that I showed you is going to really, really feel it. And Saturn is going to be delivering some difficult lessons. Saturn is going to be putting that side of you under pressure to perform to a new and higher standard. If it's your moon or your Ceres, you're likely to feel emotionally unsettled, ungrounded, or unsupported. And if it's your Venus or Juno, it's likely to impact you in your relationships. You're likely to feel lonely or unloved, or like your partnership just isn't really working out for you. And that isn't necessarily the truth, but it is meant as a time of testing. And the test should go forward. If Saturn is transiting something that feels even more personal, such as your sun or your rising, for example, or your chart ruler, meaning whatever planet it is that rules your rising sign, then you're likely to feel like you are under a microscope and you're being judged and you're being tested by life itself. You may feel like your work reputation is really under the gun. And how you respond to the Saturn transit makes all of the difference. And this is why the Jupiter transit matters. And this is why in transits like this, where Jupiter joins in during a transit of another planet that's more difficult, this is where I call Jupiter your good fairy. And that's because Jupiter blesses where another planet has cursed. So in fairy tales, in folklore, of which I read an awful lot when I was a child, there is not just a fairy tale, but a type of fairy tales organized around a theme that you might call fairy gifts. This is where there is the christening of the infant royalty, which in the story of Sleeping Beauty, which you're probably very familiar with, is a princess. And they invite all of the fairies to bring their gifts of charm and grace and beauty and wisdom and, docility or whatever they wanted back in medieval times. And so the fairies show up and they're like waving their wands and they're bestowing their fairy gifts upon the princess. And then an angry fairy shows up and she's angry because she wasn't invited. This is not like the Disney version in which the fairy it's all very black and white. It's all like Maleficent. She's just evil. We didn't invite her because she's just evil. And And that's not how it was in the original fairy tales. It was just a pissed off fairy who was, mad about not being invited. And she shows up. And because fairies are whimsical, she says, I'm going to curse the baby princess. She's going to prick her finger on a spindle and die when she's 16. There's nothing you can do about it. And then she leaves. And then there's one last good fairy who steps up and says, hey, I haven't given my gift yet, and I can't completely undo what that bad fairy did, what that mean fairy did, but I can soften it. I can change it so that instead of, I can't stop her from pricking her finger on a spindle. That is absolutely going to happen. I'm sorry. You will try to remove all of the spindles from the kingdom before she's ever 16, and it will fail. She will absolutely do that. But instead of dying, she will just sleep for 100 years. And all the rest of the castle will sleep for 100 years, and then she'll be awakened by true love's first kiss, and life will go on. And it will be better, actually, than it was going to be. She will meet the prince of her dreams, and he will show up, and he will rescue her and all of you, and it will be a better outcome. And that is, as you know from the story of Sleeping Beauty, what transpires. So the promise of Jupiter this year is that when you are in the depths of Saturn despair and pressure, when you're feeling Saturn's, judgment falling upon you, when you are feeling that Saturn is showing you all of your inadequacies in their stark, glaring glory, Jupiter jumps in and says, hey, I got your back. You've got this. You can do this. I'll give you everything that you need to do this. Here, take some confidence, take some certainty, take some self-esteem, and wail on this. You can do it. And you can emerge from all this better than if you had never suffered from Saturn. And if that's not the best kind of life lesson, I don't know what is. So that is what Jupiter is going to be doing with the Saturn transits. Now, the Chiron Jupiter thing is a little bit different, and this is why I call it the wingman. You may not know this, but the idea of the wingman comes actually from the men who were very actively coaching each other on how to be a player in like the 90s and the aughts, like here's how to get with women. And so they named this role, which is the wingman, which is the guy who helps to set you up, for the slam dunk with a woman in a bar, right? That's your wingman. He's got your back. He's going to support you. He's going to help you look good. He's going to disappear if that woman looks more interested in him than you. He's your guy, right? That's your wingman. So that's what Jupiter is doing for Chiron this year. And it applies mostly, I want to say almost entirely, to planets that you have in Aries that Chiron is transiting. So if you have something that Chiron is transiting this year in Aries, or even realistically, if it transited that planet in Aries last year, which would take its degrees as early as like 17. So if you have something between 17 and 21 degrees of Aries, and that planet is feeling like, oh my God, I've been facing my core wounding. I have been trying to, Aries, I've been trying to assert myself in this area. I've been trying to be direct. I've been trying to be strong. I've been trying to be a warrior in the world. And I'm just so like beaten about the head and neck, and I'm really suffering. And I'm so broken in this area. Jupiter, this is the year in which Jupiter comes along and says, hey, you can do this. You can heal this. You can heal this old trauma from, when your parents used to hit you when you were a child. You can heal this old trauma from when you were bullied in the schoolyard. You can heal this old trauma from when your hope and your faith in your own ability and your will was crushed as a child. And all the layers that snowballed on top of that in adulthood, when you tried to know what you want or tried to get what you want and failed to even get on the right path for that and just cowered in fear the whole time. Like all those snowball layers can melt away this year with the help of Jupiter. And so watching Jupiter transit those planets that you may have in Aries between, let's say, 17 degrees and 21 degrees is an opportunity for you to um, draw on the confidence that you need to complete the healing process and learn, and for that Aries placed planet of yours to learn to assert itself in a balanced way, not exploding in anger, not playing the victim, not cowering in fear, not submitting to the will of everyone around you, and in fact discovering your own will and walking your own path through the world in a self-determined way that is neither too forceful nor too cowardly. And Jupiter can help you with that this year. I'm going to finish up this video now with some specific dates when Jupiter connects with Saturn and with Chiron this year, and pretty much going to confine it to 2024. So on this diagram, we see Jupiter moving along and connecting with Saturn right here on August 19th, and then bypassing Saturn and coming back and squaring Saturn again on December 24th of 2024. And then Jupiter cruises off into the sunset and actually does meet up with Saturn for a third pass on June 9th of 2025. But by that point, they'll both be in different signs. And so it's like a different story. Whereas these two are very connected and they're plot points in the same story happening this year. So these are dates to watch, August 19th and December 24th. Definitely watch the weeks, like the 2-week period surrounding both of those dates. And especially if you have anything at all in your chart at 17 degrees of a mutable sign, you're going to feel this pass quite strongly. And if you have anything at all in your chart at 14 degrees of a mutable sign, you're going to feel this pass quite strongly. But remember, you don't have to have something at just these 2 degrees in order to feel these transits this year. All you need is to have anything at all in your chart from 12 to 19 degrees of any mutable sign at all, and you will undoubtedly feel this one. The other one, of course, is Jupiter connecting with Chiron harmoniously. There are 3 passes for this, and I am extending this into 2025 because they continue occupying their same signs. So here we have Chiron in Aries, Jupiter meeting up and sextiling from Gemini right here. And that happens October 12th. Jupiter sextiling Chiron at 21 degrees. And here Jupiter is doing it again at 20 degrees. And here Jupiter is connecting up with Chiron at 25 degrees. You might say that Jupiter reconnects with Chiron while he's on his way out of town. So as I said with Saturn, if you have something in your chart at exactly these right degrees, then you'll really feel it. But this transit applies really strongly to placements that you might have in Aries alone, not all of the cardinal signs, but Aries specifically. That's because Chiron will definitely conjunct your Aries placement and Jupiter will sextile it, but Jupiter will not sextile just anything that Chiron connects with. So if you have anything at all in your chart at 21 degrees of Aries, you're going to feel this pass really strongly and feel like Jupiter is supporting your Chiron transit really strongly. So this could be a time during your Chiron transit when you're feeling like you can really cope with it well. Now here, Jupiter sextiles Chiron at 20 degrees. So if you've got something that in your chart at Aries 20 degrees and Chiron has been transiting it, Jupiter is going to really provide the assist on this date, November 2nd. And then finally, Jupiter will make one last sextile to Chiron before he moves off into the next sign of Cancer. That happens in May of 2025. So at any of these dates, when Jupiter is assisting Chiron, you might find that something in your life is giving you an assist, helping you to cope with the Chiron transit in a better way and to heal and to come out of it, with a bounce in your step. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you something good, something useful for your life. You can find me at pandoraastrology.com and on Patreon as well. And until next time, I'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.